The acrid smoke of burning hydrocarbons filled Staff Sergeant Michael "Ghost" Anderson's lungs as he struggled to breathe through his damaged armor filtration system. The ruins of New Terran stretched endlessly before him, a wasteland of shattered concrete and twisted metal reaching toward an ash-choked sky. His Mark VI Crusader-powered armor, once humanity's proudest achievement in military technology, now lay in pieces around him, its primary systems flickering between life and death. The blast had caught him mid-stride. One moment he'd been leading his squad through the rubble-strewn streets. The next, a crystalline energy burst had torn through his armor's right side like paper. The shot had come from nowhere. The Sarlaxians' ability to bend light around their forms made them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Anderson tried to move, but white-hot pain lanced through his body. Through the cracked display of his helmet, he could see the damage report: 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and a punctured lung. The armor's medical systems were working overtime, pumping biofoam into his wounds, but without main power, they would fail within minutes. A sound like wind chimes in a hurricane cut through the battlefield's chaos, the distinctive resonance of approaching Sarlaxian warriors. Anderson forced himself to remain still, remembering his training. The crystalline aliens were arrogant, yes, but they weren't stupid. Any obvious movement would bring immediate death. 3 massive figures emerged from the smoke, their translucent bodies refracting the fires around them into dazzling patterns. Each stood nearly 3 meters tall, their crystalline forms shaped into what humans had come to recognize as the armor of the Praetorian Guard, the elite warriors of the Galactic Confederation. Organic debris, the first one spoke, its voice a cascade of musical tones that Anderson's armor translated into English. Another human warrior who thought their primitive exoskeletons could match Sarlaxian battle crystal. The second Praetorian moved closer, its form shifting colors in what Anderson had learned was their equivalent of amusement. Look at how they build their armor: solid metal and ceramics. They don't even understand the basic principles of crystalline resonance. It's like watching cave dwellers throw rocks at a stellar dreadnought. The third warrior, its form tinged with deep purple hues, prodded Anderson's armor with a crystalline appendage. This one still functions, barely. Their medical technology is surprisingly persistent, if crude. Should we end its suffering? Why waste the energy? The first one responded, its tone dripping with disdain. Their bodies are so fragile, it will expire soon enough. The heat of our final victory over this city will reduce it and its primitive armor to ash. Anderson remained motionless, every fiber of his being focused on controlling his breathing. His hand, hidden beneath his body, slowly moved toward the emergency beacon controls. The Sarlaxians continued their conversation, their arrogance making them blind to his subtle movements. "Did you record their battle frequencies?" the purple-tinged warrior asked. "Command wants a full analysis of their combat doctrine, primitive as it is." "Of course," the second warrior chimed, its crystalline form vibrating with pride. "Though I doubt they'll find anything useful. These humans fight like cornered animals, all emotion and desperation. No harmony, no resonance, just chaos and violence." As they spoke, Anderson's fingers found the recorder controls. Their overconfidence was their weakness. They didn't bother to scan for active electronics in what they assumed was a dying soldier's armor. The quantum recorder spun up silently, capturing every frequency, every harmonic pattern of their bodies and weapons. The Praetorians moved on, their crystalline forms slowly fading back into near invisibility as they activated their light-bending capabilities. Only when their wind-chime voices had faded completely did Anderson allow himself to activate the armor's emergency transponder. As his consciousness began to fade, a grim smile crossed his bloodied face. The Sarlaxians had unknowingly given him something far more valuable than a quick death. They'd given him insight into their tactical communications, their movement patterns, and most importantly, their absolute conviction in their own superiority. His last thought, before the darkness took him, was a promise. They would learn just how dangerous an underestimated human could be. The steady hum of medical equipment filled the recovery ward aboard the U.S. Nightingale, Earth's most advanced medical frigate currently stationed in lunar orbit. Staff Sergeant Michael Anderson lay suspended in a regeneration chamber, his body floating in a sea of golden medical nanites. Through the transparent panel, doctors observed the miraculous work of rebuilding a broken soldier. His survival defies medical precedent, Dr. Eleanor Walsh whispered to the assembled team. The biofoam from his armor kept him alive for 6 hours in that wreckage. 6 hours with a punctured lung and severe internal bleeding. Commander Sarah Hayes, head of Project Battlefield Recovery, studied the medical readouts with intense interest. What about his neural patterns during those 6 hours? Were you able to recover the data? Dr. Walsh nodded, pulling up a holographic display. That's the fascinating part. Look at his brain activity while the Sarlaxians were present. The display showed waves of unusual symmetry, patterns that pulsed in stark contrast to normal human neural activity. His brain was adapting. Commander Hayes breathed, her eyes widening, synchronizing with their resonance patterns. A grunt from the regeneration chamber drew their attention. Anderson's eyes had opened, and despite the breathing apparatus, he was clearly trying to communicate. Dr. Walsh rushed to the chamber's communication panel. Sergeant Anderson, please remain calm. You're aboard the Nightingale. You're safe. Anderson's hand moved in a writing motion. Dr. Walsh quickly provided a digital pad, waterproof for use in the chamber. His fingers moved with surprising steadiness as he wrote, "The recording. Did it survive?" Commander Hayes stepped forward. "We recovered everything, Sergeant. Over 3 hours of pure Sarlaxian tactical data. But right now, you need to focus on recovery." He shook his head, writing again, "Show me, while I heal. Need to understand." Dr. Walsh started to object, but Commander Hayes raised her hand. "Doctor, what's his projected recovery time?" "At least 3 months for the cybernetic integration alone. The neural lace needs time to properly sync with his nervous system. Then let's make that time productive." Hayes turned to Anderson. "Sergeant, I'm going to make you a deal. You focus on healing, on accepting the cybernetic enhancements, and I'll make sure you get every piece of Sarlaxian combat footage we have. Deal?" Anderson's smile was visible even through the breathing apparatus. He wrote one word, "Deal." Over the next 3 months, Anderson's recovery room became a tactical analysis center. Between surgeries and physical therapy sessions, he absorbed everything about Sarlaxian combat doctrine. The neural lace that helped control his new cybernetic enhancements also allowed him to process battlefield data at unprecedented speeds. During one of his analysis sessions, Anderson noticed something that everyone else had missed. He called Dr. Walsh and Commander Hayes to his room. "Watch their crystalline forms before each attack," he demonstrated, playing back footage from his own encounter. "See that shimmer? It's not random. Their entire bodies telegraph their moves through resonance patterns." Commander Hayes leaned forward, studying the footage. "Are you saying we could predict their attacks?" "Better." Anderson's cybernetically enhanced hand moved through the holographic display, isolating specific frequency patterns. Their whole combat system relies on harmonic coordination. It's why they think we're primitive. We don't fight in perfect crystalline synchronization like they do. "But how does this help us?" Dr. Walsh asked. Anderson's grin held a predatory edge. "Because my neural lace picks up these patterns now. And if we can detect them," he let the thought hang in the air, "we can disrupt them." Commander Hayes finished, her expression matching Anderson's. She turned to Dr. Walsh. "Doctor, how soon can Sergeant Anderson be cleared for a new project?" "You mean Project Nemesis?" Dr. Walsh asked, raising an eyebrow. "The classified sonic warfare initiative." "Exactly." Hayes turned back to Anderson. "How would you like to teach those arrogant crystals the true price of underestimating humanity?" Anderson's response was immediate and firm. "When do we start?" Deep within the Rocky Mountain complex, Beneath layers of hardened granite and electromagnetic shielding, Staff Sergeant Michael Anderson stood before a wall of crystalline shards. Each fragment had been salvaged from fallen Sarlaxian warriors, their once brilliant surfaces now dulled and lifeless. His cybernetically enhanced hand traced patterns in the air as he spoke to the assembled team of quantum physicists. Their entire society is built on resonance, he explained, his neural lace projecting holographic patterns that danced between the crystal shards. Every movement, every thought, every weapon they create, it all flows through these harmonic frequencies. Dr. James Reynolds, the lead quantum physicist, adjusted his spectacles as he studied the patterns. And you're saying your neural implants can detect these frequencies? More than detect. Anderson closed his eyes, concentrating. The neural lace hummed to life, sending out a precise pattern of electromagnetic pulses. The crystalline shards began to vibrate, their surfaces flickering with weak light. Remarkable, Dr. Reynolds whispered, checking his instruments. Your brain patterns are actually interfering with their base resonance frequency. But how is this possible? Lieutenant Colonel Margaret Chen, Project Nemesis's military overseer, stepped forward. Because they never considered us a threat worth studying, they dismissed human consciousness as random electrical noise, primitive and chaotic. Anderson nodded, opening his eyes. But that's their weakness. Our neural patterns aren't bound by crystalline structure. We're adaptable, unpredictable. And with these cybernetic enhancements, he concentrated again, this time focusing on a specific shard. The crystal began to vibrate at an increasing frequency until hairline cracks appeared on its surface. With a sound like breaking glass, the shard shattered into dust. The room fell silent. Holy shit, Dr. Reynolds breathed, forgetting military protocol. You just disrupted its molecular structure through harmonic interference. Now imagine this on a battlefield scale, Lieutenant Colonel Chen said, her eyes gleaming. Their formations, their communications, their very weapons all rely on maintaining perfect crystalline harmony. Anderson walked to a secure terminal, pulling up footage from his encounter in New Tehran. Watch their tactical formations. Every squad moves in resonance patterns. Their energy weapons fire through crystalline focus arrays. Even their battlefield coordination depends on harmonic links between warriors. Dr. Reynolds was already running calculations on his quantum computer. If we could broadcast these disruptive frequencies across a wide area, we'd turn their greatest strength into a catastrophic weakness. Anderson finished. But there's more. He interfaced directly with the facility's mainframe through his neural lace, bringing up detailed scans of Sarlaxian physiology. Their nervous system, if you can call it that, runs on quantum entanglement through crystalline matrices. It's why they can coordinate so perfectly in battle. And why they're so vulnerable to harmonic disruption, Lieutenant Colonel Chen mused. One soldier's disrupted patterns could cascade through their entire battle network. The implications hung heavy in the air. They weren't just developing a weapon. They were creating something that could fundamentally change the nature of the war. There's a catch, Anderson said, his expression grim. The disruption has to come from an active human mind. Recorded patterns don't work. Believe me, we've tried. It needs the complexity and unpredictability of human consciousness, enhanced by cybernetics. Lieutenant Colonel Chen nodded slowly. Then we'll need more soldiers like you. Veterans who faced the Sarlaxians, who understand their patterns, and who are willing to undergo cybernetic enhancement. I already have a list, Anderson said, bringing up personnel files. Soldiers who survived Sarlaxian attacks, who showed unusual resilience or insight. With proper training and enhancement, each one could become a walking disruption field. Dr. Reynolds studied the technical readouts with growing excitement. We'll need to refine the neural lace design, optimize it for harmonic generation, and develop ways to protect our own troops from the feedback. Do it, Lieutenant Colonel Chen ordered. Sergeant Anderson, you'll oversee the training program. Those crystal bastards think they've got this war won. Time to show them what happens when they underestimate human ingenuity. Anderson's smile held no warmth as he looked at the shattered crystal dust. They wanted harmony, he said softly. Let's give them chaos instead. The underground training facility echoed with the sound of crystalline resonance as Staff Sergeant Anderson faced his newest recruit. Captain Michelle Santos stood in the center of the practice ring, her newly installed neural lace glowing faintly beneath her skin as she concentrated on the target before her. Feel the pattern, Anderson coached, adjusting the Tarlaxian training crystal's frequency. Don't try to match it. That's what they expect. Let your mind create its own rhythm. Santos gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead. The crystal began to vibrate, then suddenly stopped. She cursed in frustration. I lost it again. You're thinking like a soldier, Anderson said, stepping closer. We've all been trained to seek order, to follow patterns, but that's not what we need here. Tell me about Madrid. Santos' eyes darkened. What about it? Tell me what you felt when the crystal guard attacked your physician. Rage, she said immediately. Helplessness. Watching them cut through our defenses like they were nothing. The way they laughed. She stopped, noticing that the training crystal had begun to crack. Anderson smiled. That's it. Raw human emotion. The thing they consider our weakness. Channel it. Around the training room, other members of the newly formed Wraith team watched intently. Master Sergeant David Cooper, who'd survived an encounter in Singapore, his cybernetic leg gleaming under the harsh lights. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, her neural lace still fresh from surgery, who'd held off Tarlaxian advance in Buenos Aires, with nothing but a broken rifle and pure determination. The neural lace doesn't just enhance your natural abilities, Anderson explained, addressing the whole team. It lets you weaponize what makes us human. Our emotions, our chaos, our unpredictability. Everything they mock us for. He gestured to a larger crystal formation in the center of the room. Form up. Let's show the captain how we coordinate. The team moved into position, their neural laces pulsing in sync. Each soldier carried their own battle scars, their own reasons for volunteering for the cybernetic program. Together, they created a complex web of disruptive frequencies that made the crystal formation sing with disharmony. This is just a fraction of what we'll face in the field, Anderson continued. Their warriors are linked in perfect crystalline networks, but that perfection is their weakness. One disruption cascades through their entire formation. Cooper stepped forward, his cybernetic leg humming. Show them the recording. Ghost. Anderson nodded, interfacing with the room's systems. A holographic display sprang to life, showing footage from their latest test. A captured Tarlaxian drone, its crystalline form pristine and deadly, faced off against 3 members of Wraith team. As the drone activated its combat protocols, the team launched a coordinated neural assault. The drone's surface began to fracture, its movements becoming erratic before it collapsed into inert fragments. That's what happens when their precious harmony meets human chaos, Rodriguez said, a fierce grin on her face. They never saw it coming. Santos studied the footage intently. But won't they adapt? Create countermeasures? They can't, Anderson replied. Their entire civilization is built on crystalline resonance. They'd have to fundamentally change their biology, their technology, their entire way of thinking. Their pride won't let them. He turned to face his team, his voice taking on a harder edge. In 3 days, we launch our first field operation. A Tarlaxian supply base on Europa. Small garrison, minimal defenses, the perfect testing ground for our capabilities. They'll underestimate us, Cooper said, just like they always do. Anderson's smile was cold. Exactly. They'll see a small human strike team and think we're desperate, throwing away lives in a futile attack. They won't realize we're something new, something their perfect crystalline minds never imagined possible. He looked at each member of Wraith team, seeing the same determination, the same controlled fury in their eyes. We're humanity's chaos given form. And it's time to show the galaxy why you should never mock a wounded soldier. The training crystal shattered as Santos finally unleashed her full potential, her laughter mixing with the sound of breaking crystal. Wraith Team was ready for war. Europa's ice plains stretched endlessly beneath the stealth dropship as Wraith Team approached their target. The Sarlaxian supply base rose from the frozen surface like a cluster of crystalline thorns, its geometric perfection a stark contrast to the natural chaos of Jupiter's sphered moon. Final equipment check. Staff Sergeant Anderson commanded over their neural network. The team's thoughts flowed together, each member's status reporting instantly through their linked consciousness. Their new battle-resonant suits hummed with potential energy, designed specifically to amplify their disruptive capabilities. Remember, Anderson continued, we hit their communication node first. Once it's down, they can't call for reinforcement. He passed his gaze over his team. Captain Santos, her hand steady on her sonic disruptor. Master Sergeant Cooper, monitoring the base's crystalline energy signatures. Lieutenant Rodriguez, ready to breach their perimeter defenses. The dropship touched down silently 2 kilometers from the base. Wraith Team deployed in perfect formation. Not the rigid geometric patterns of Tarlaxian warriors, but an organic, flowing movement that mimicked the random patterns of wind-blown snow. Contact in 3 minutes, Cooper reported, his cybernetic leg compensating automatically for the icy terrain. Picking up standard patrol patterns. 2 guards on the outer perimeter, resonating at combat frequency. Anderson raised his hand, signaling the team to halt. Through his enhanced vision, he could see the Sarlaxian guards, their crystalline forms partially phased to blend with the environment. To normalize, they would be nearly invisible. Santos, Rodriguez, disruptive pattern alpha, he commanded. The 2 soldiers stepped forward, their neural laces pulsing as they generated carefully calibrated interference waves. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Sarlaxian guards stumbled, their perfectly synchronized movements falling into chaos as human-generated discord invaded their crystalline nervous systems. Before they could raise an alarm, their forms shattered into countless glittering shards. Move up, Anderson ordered. Cooper, status on their internal network. They haven't noticed yet, Cooper replied, monitoring the base's resonance patterns. Their harmony is still stable. They're so confident in their superiority, they don't even have proximity alerts. The team reached the base's outer wall, a seamless barrier of living crystal that pulsed with energy. Rodriguez stepped forward, placing her hands against the surface. Her neural lace interfaced with the crystalline structure, searching for weaknesses. Found it, she whispered after a moment. Their defensive matrix has a harmonic cycle. When it peaks, she concentrated, sending a precise pulse of chaotic energy through the wall. A section briefly turned opaque before dissolving into powder, leaving a perfect breach point. Inside, the base was a maze of crystalline corridors, each surface humming with the same frequencies that the Sarlaxians used for communication and power distribution. Wraith Team moved like shadows, their chaotic neural patterns making them nearly undetectable to the base's harmonic sensors. They reached the central communication node without resistance. Anderson allowed himself a grim smile. The Sarlaxians' arrogance had made them lazy. They never expected anyone to penetrate their perfect defenses. Splitting frequencies, Santos announced, her hands dancing through the air as she manipulated invisible energy patterns. Ready for full disruption. Anderson nodded. Execute. The team linked their neural patterns, creating a cascading wave of human consciousness that crashed against the base's crystalline network. The effect was catastrophic. Throughout the facility, Sarlaxian warriors fell to their knees as their mental linkages dissolved into static. Emergency systems tried to compensate but only spread the disruption faster. Their FTL transmitter is trying to send a distress signal, Cooper reported with satisfaction. But they can't maintain quantum coherence through our interference. They're completely isolated. Anderson activated his combat frequencies, addressing the facility's remaining defenders. Attention, Sarlaxian forces. Your harmony is broken. Your perfection is shattered. Surrender now, or face complete crystalline destabilization. The response came in fragments of broken harmonics, the Sarlaxian equivalent of panic. They had never faced an enemy who could turn their own nature against them so completely. Ghost protocol successful, Anderson transmitted to command. Base is secured. The Sarlaxians just learned that human chaos beats crystalline perfection. As his team moved to secure their prisoners, Anderson allowed himself a moment of dark satisfaction. This was just the beginning, a small demonstration of humanity's potential. Soon, the entire Galactic Confederation would learn the price of their mockery. The Grand Chamber of Resonance aboard the Sarlaxian flagship, Eternal Symphony, vibrated with discordant energies as the High Command reviewed the footage from Europa. Supreme Commander Crystalex, his form shimmering with barely contained rage, watched the recording of their elite warriors shattering like common glass. Impossible, he resonated, his crystalline structure flickering between deep crimson and violet. These primitives could not have developed such capabilities without help. There must be traitors within the Confederation. First strategist Harmonist stepped forward, her more delicate crystal form displaying patterns of analytical thought. The evidence suggests otherwise. Supreme Commander, they'd found a way to weaponize their own neural patterns. Our greatest strength has become our vulnerability. Then we will crush them before they can perfect this abomination, Crystalex declared. Prepare Operation Crystal Spear. We will deploy our entire Crystal Guard fleet. These humans think they have found our weakness. Let them face the full might of Sarlaxian perfection. On Earth, Staff Sergeant Anderson stood before the combined military command, presenting the results of the Europa raid. The chamber was packed with generals and admirals from every nation's armed forces, all united in humanity's fight for survival. The operation exceeded all expectations, Anderson reported, his neural lace projecting detailed tactical data. The Sarlaxian base fell in less than 30 minutes, 0 casualties on our side. Complete capture of their supply chain data and tactical protocols. General Zhang of the Pan-Asian Alliance leaned forward. And you believe they will retaliate? Not just retaliate, Anderson replied, bringing up intelligence feeds. Our quantum sensors are detecting massive fleet movements. They're deploying their legendary Crystal Guard, the most powerful fighting force in the Confederation. Admiral Hassan's weathered face showed concern. How many ships? All of them, Anderson said grimly. They're mounting a full-scale invasion. Their pride won't let them do anything less. Lieutenant Colonel Chen stepped up beside Anderson, addressing the assembly. This is exactly what we've been preparing for. Wraith Team's success wasn't just about taking one base. It was about provoking them into overcommitting. The holographic display shifted, showing Earth's orbital defense grid. Hundreds of newly installed resonance disruptors glowed softly, their design based on the data gathered from the Europa raid. They'll come at us with everything they have, Anderson continued. Perfect formations, synchronized attacks, absolute confidence in their superiority. And that's when we'll show them the true power of human adaptation. The room filled with the sound of incoming priority alerts. Admiral Hassan checked his neural feed and stood abruptly. The Sarlaxian fleet has just emerged from hyperspace. 5,000 ships arranging themselves in attack formation around Saturn. Anderson's expression hardened. They're being theatrical, wanting us to see their perfect battle geometry. How long until they reach Earth? 6 hours at their current speed. Then it's time to activate the rest of the teams, Anderson said. All across Earth, other groups like Wraith Team had been training, preparing for this moment. We've got something special planned for their grand entrance. Lieutenant Colonel Chen nodded to the assembled commanders. Operation Discordant Symphony is now in effect. All cybernetically enhanced troops are to deploy to their designated positions. The Sarlaxians think this is their endgame. Let's show them it's actually ours. As the commands went out, Anderson received a private transmission from Captain Santos. The neural feed carried her anticipation. They're bringing their entire crystal guard, Ghost, just like you predicted. Pride goes before the fall, Captain, Anderson responded, remembering those arrogant warriors who had mocked him in New Tehran. They're so convinced of their superiority that they can't conceive of defeat. That's why they're bringing everything they have, to make an example of us. Instead, we'll make an example of them. Anderson smiled as he watched the tactical display, where thousands of human defenders took their positions, their neural laces humming with potential. Exactly. Let them come with their perfect formations and unbreakable crystals. Humanity's about to teach the galaxy a lesson about the power of chaos. The skies above New Tehran burned with crystalline fire as the Tarlaxian Crystal Guard descended through Earth's atmosphere. Their formations were perfect geometric patterns, each ship linked in harmonic resonance with its neighbors. Leading the assault was Supreme Commander Crystalex himself, his flagship a massive shard of living crystal that dwarfed all others. Staff Sergeant Anderson watched from his command position, the ruins around him hauntingly familiar. This was the same battlefield where he had once lain broken and mocked. Now he stood tall in his new battle resonance suit, Wraith teams spread out in carefully planned positions around him. Crystal Guard deployment patterns confirmed. Captain Santos reported through their neural link. They're arranging themselves in the sacred spiral formation, just like the ancient texts we captured on Europa described. Of course they are, Anderson replied, a grim smile playing across his face. They're not just here to win. They're here to demonstrate their cultural superiority. Each formation is a piece of religious art to them. The first wave of Sarlaxian warriors materialized on the ground, their crystalline forms catching the light of their orbital bombardment. Among them, Anderson recognized 3 particular forms, the same Praetorians who had laughed at him months ago, now promoted to Crystal Guard commanders. Multiple quantum signatures detected, Master Sergeant Cooper announced. They're linking their consciousness into a battle meditation network. Every warrior in their army is becoming part of a single crystalline mind. Anderson's voice carried through the neural network to all human defenders. Remember your training. Let them make the first move. Let them think they have us surrounded and outmaneuvered. Wait for my signal. The lead Crystal Guard commander stepped forward, his form resonating with harmonics that translated into booming speech. Primitive humans, you dare to corrupt the sacred art of crystalline warfare. Your chaos ends today. Witness true perfection. Thousands of crystal warriors moved in perfect synchronization, their weapons charging with devastating energy. The sight was meant to inspire awe and terror, a display of power that had broken countless civilizations before. Anderson's response was a single word: now. Wraith team activated their neural laces in perfect anti-harmony. The disruption began subtly, small fractures in the Sarlaxians' perfect formation, tiny discordant notes in their battle symphony. The Crystal Guard commanders noticed too late what was happening. Their entire army is linked into a single network, Anderson transmitted to his forces. Pour everything you have into the disruption. Show them what human chaos really means. The battlefield erupted into invisible warfare. Waves of human neural energy crashed against crystalline barriers. Where Tarlaxian perfection met human unpredictability, the crystals began to crack. Warriors who had never known defeat found their movements becoming erratic, their perfect coordination shattered by waves of emotional chaos. The same commander who had once mocked Anderson turned toward him, recognition flowing through his crystalline form. Impossible. You were beaten, broken. I was, Anderson agreed, stepping forward as his neural lace pulsed with power. But humans don't break permanently. We adapt. We evolve. We come back stronger. He unleashed a focused burst of neural energy, not just disruption, but a concentrated stream of human memory and emotion. The commander staggered as images flooded his crystalline consciousness. The pain of defeat, the burning determination to survive, the satisfaction of turning weakness into strength. Around them, the battle had become a rout. The sacred spiral formation, meant to be invincible, collapsed into chaos as human defenders exploited its rigid structure. Crystal Guard warriors fell by the hundreds, their perfect harmonies turned to discord. Supreme Commander Crystal X's voice boomed across the battlefield. Fall back. Reconfigure to secondary battle patterns. But Anderson knew they couldn't. Their entire military doctrine, their combat protocols, their very way of thinking, all of it depended on maintaining perfect crystalline harmony. Once shattered, they had no backup strategy, no way to adapt. "You should have finished me when you had the chance," Anderson transmitted to the Crystal Guard commander, watching as fractures spread across the alien's once perfect form. "Instead, you taught humanity exactly what we needed to know to defeat you." The commander's response was lost in a cascade of breaking crystal as the entire Crystal Guard battle network collapsed under the weight of human chaos. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Confederation hummed with tense energy as representatives from 100 crystalline species gathered to witness something unprecedented: the formal surrender of the Sarlaxian Crystal Guard. Supreme Commander Crystal X, his once perfect form now webbed with stress fractures, stood before the assembly. Staff Sergeant Anderson led the human delegation, Wraith team at his side. Their neural laces pulsed quietly, a subtle reminder of the power that had brought the mighty Crystal Guard to its knees. The chamber's crystalline architecture seemed less imposing now, its perfect geometries holding a different meaning after their victory. "The terms of surrender are unprecedented," First Speaker Luminex announced, her crystalline form vibrating with carefully controlled frequencies. "The Sarlaxian Empire will cease all military operations against Earth. Furthermore, humanity will be granted full membership in the Galactic Confederation, with all rights and privileges thereof." Murmurs of harmonic discord rippled through the chamber. Captain Santos, monitoring the crystalline emotions through her neural interface, leaned close to Anderson. "They're struggling to accept it. Their whole society is built on the idea of crystalline superiority." Anderson nodded, stepping forward to address the assembly. "Members of the Confederation, we do not come seeking dominion or revenge. We come offering a new perspective, one that your perfect crystalline minds need." He interfaced with the chamber's communication matrix, projecting images of the battle. "Look at how we defeated the Crystal Guard. Not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through adaptation, through embracing the chaos that you despise." Supreme Commander Crystal X's form shifted, displaying patterns of revelation. "We thought their unpredictability was weakness," he admitted to the assembly. "Their emotions, their disorder, their constant change. We saw it as proof of their primitive nature. We were wrong. Humanity's greatest strength," Anderson continued, "is not our ability to match your perfection, but our ability to evolve, to take our defeats and learn from them, to transform our weaknesses into strengths." He turned to face the 3 former Crystal Guard commanders who had once mocked him. Their forms were different now, changed by their experience of defeat. "You laughed at a wounded soldier, thinking him broken and worthless. Instead, that moment became the key to your downfall." Master Sergeant Cooper stepped forward, his cybernetic leg clicking against the crystalline floor. "We're offering you something your perfect society has never had: the ability to adapt, to change, to grow beyond your rigid patterns." Lieutenant Colonel Chen, representing Earth's military command, activated a holographic display. "Already, our scientists are working on ways to help your crystalline forms achieve controlled flexibility. Not chaos, but controlled adaptation. The ability to bend without breaking." The chamber filled with harmonics of consideration and debate. First Speaker Luminex raised her form to its full height. "The Confederation has existed for 10,000 years, unchanged, undefeated. Yet in less than 1 orbital cycle, humanity has forced us to confront our own limitations." "That's what humans do," Anderson replied. "We push boundaries. We challenge assumptions. We evolve, and we help others evolve too." The first speaker's form resonated with decision. "Then let this defeat mark not an ending, but a beginning. Humanity will join the Confederation not as conquered subjects, but as teachers. Your chaos will help our order adapt. Your emotion will give our logic purpose. As the chamber erupted in harmonics of agreement, Anderson felt a private transmission from the Crystal Guard commander who had first mocked him in New Tehran. "We thought we were perfect," the commander resonated. "You taught us the perfect can never grow." Anderson smiled, remembering that moment of humiliation that had led to this victory. "Sometimes," he transmitted back, "you have to break something to make it stronger." The signing of the peace treaty marked more than the end of a war. It marked the beginning of a new era for both humanity and the Confederation. The crystal species would learn to adapt, to embrace controlled chaos, while humanity would gain access to the wisdom of the stars. And in the years that followed, when new civilizations asked how humans had earned their place among the galactic powers, they would tell the story of a wounded soldier who turned mockery into the key to victory, teaching an ancient empire that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to rise stronger from defeat.